Charlotte Mason Enrichment is thrilled to bring you another incredible summer conference. This year, our theme is building strong families through habits of the home. Nothing of value and purpose happens on accident. Strong families must be built with intentionality, effort, and consistency. That sounds like a habit to me. Charlotte said that the habits of the child produce the character of the man. She also said that there is nothing which we do which is important as forming habits, because after all, it is that which makes the difference between one person and another. The habits that we keep are a big deal, and they are an important part of the work that we do as parents and home educators. So at the conference, we're going to be looking at habits in 4 different categories. The first one is the habits of the heart, the habits of the mother, the habits of the child, the habits of the schoolroom, and we're also going to talk about homemaking, because that's a really big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I have invited Miss Cindy Rollins, Amy Farquhar, Rachel Bird, Mary Salas, and Melissa Stefani to help us unpack these amazing topics. These ladies are phenomenal, and they have so much wisdom. They have so much expertise to speak to these topics. And so I know that we are going to learn and grow a lot from each session and each speaker. So the dates of the conference are July 18th and 19th. The 18th is a VIP session at night. And then the 19th is a full day where we are going to just be committed to learning and growing and having some fun while we're at it. So you can join us in person in Tulsa, or you can join us virtually for the entirety of the day. Be sure to go to charlottemasonenrichment.com/conference. That's charlottemasonenrichment.com/conference for more information and to get your tickets. And please tell all your CM mamas about this event, and I can't wait to see you there. Well, hello, and welcome to the Charlotte Mason Enrichment Podcast. My name's Elise Thompson, and I am your host. And the whole reason we have the Charlotte Mason Enrichment Podcast is to encourage you, to equip you, and to educate you as a Charlotte Mason Enrichment home educator. And so I am so excited. We are recording face-to-face, which is not something that we normally do, but I'm excited to have my dear friend Rebecca Gorgas on the podcast with me today. And we are talking about how students with learning differences can thrive using Charlotte Mason's method. And so Rebecca was the person that I thought immediately we could really unpack this topic with. We actually had this as a breakout session for the conference last summer, and I got a message from a lady that was just so deeply impacted from your breakout session. She was like, I am still thinking and reflecting and just so grateful for that session. I was like, man, I bet there's others out there that could use that glimmer of hope and just that perspective that Rebecca brings to this topic. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So Rebecca, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, I didn't think that would be a hard question.
Put you on the spot.
So I'm a mom of 2, and both my kids are grown now. My oldest is 23, and she is a professional ballet dancer and ballet teacher, and is working part-time on a degree from Oklahoma State in finance. And my youngest graduated a year ago, and he is now a welder. And so that it's just a different stage in my life.
Yeah.
We began home educating when our daughter was in 3rd grade. And our younger child, our son, has always been home educated. When we decided to homeschool, it largely because my daughter was finishing up second grade and still could not read, like, at all.
Yeah.
She had a few words that she had memorized, like, oddly, the word snake, and just other really random words that she had just memorized and knew how to spell, but she could not read, really at all. And, and I was actually told by the school when I brought up this concern, they actually said to me, "Well, Rebecca, she's so bright. You can't possibly think she's not going to learn how to read."
Mm.
And I appreciate the recognition about how smart my girl is, which is all true. Um, but what I knew as a mom, and we moms know
Mhm.
something was wrong,
Yeah.
and that was completely minimized and dismissed. And at that point, we decided to pull her out of school and try our own way at it. And our younger child was not yet school age. Um, and it took us a little bit of time to figure it out, but she's dyslexic. So yeah, she was not going to learn how to read, just, I don't know,
Yeah.
by osmosis or magic.
Hmm.
Dyslexic people need some very specific direct instruction to learn to read.
Hmm.
And that's not a reflection on how bright they are.
Right.
We did not Charlotte Mason educate yet because I had never heard of Charlotte Mason. So we had pulled our daughter out of a little Waldorf school. So our first year of homeschooling, I bought a Waldorf home education kind of box curriculum, and it was fine. Not amazing. It's also our first year of home educating, and we didn't know what we were doing. And we were figuring it out, and she still wasn't learning how to read. And then it really wasn't until she was in sixth grade and our son was in second that we uh, heard about Charlotte Mason and began to implement her principles and her method as much as I understood it at the time, which was really didn't understand it well at all at the time, but boy, we were
You
doing
did the
our
best you
best.
could. Yeah.
And then our son, it didn't take me as long to figure out that he's dyslexic because once you've been there, it's easier to see the signs.
Hmm.
He is far more profoundly affected by dyslexia than his sister is. Once we figured it out about our daughter and got the right kind of uh, teaching down, which is, spoiler, basically something based on Orton Gillingham principles. If you don't know what that means and you think you have somebody that's dyslexic in your home, look that up for sure.
Hmm.
Um, so we began with an Orton Gillingham curriculum with her, and very, very quickly she learned. We were able to remediate, and she learned to read, and
That's
she
awesome.
reads fine. Once dyslexic, always dyslexic. She will always be a terrible speller, but she knows all the workarounds for that, and that includes even now in college sending me every paper she writes for me to do a final proofread and edit on it.
Hmm.
And there are just so many uh, techie kinds of tools out there to help with people who struggle with spelling. Like, it's just not even a big deal
Hmm.
anymore. And I lost my train of thought with that. But anyway, she's and she will she reads slower than a person who's not dyslexic, but there's nothing she can't read.
Right. That's great.
Yeah. So our son is more profoundly impacted by the dyslexia. And then it took us many, 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 many years to realize the other things he was struggling with. The root of that is autism.
Hmm.
And because I'll put it in my air quotes, those listening, air quotes, those watching, here they are, my fingers, because he's very, quote, high functioning until he's not. And so if you have a, quote, high functioning autistic person in your life, you know what I mean by those air quotes.
Hmm.
So that's just an additional big challenge that our son had, and which most definitely impacted education. And we are so grateful for the Charlotte Mason method, because even before we realized about the autism, um, really and truly, her method works for anybody.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not saying that if you have a kid with literally a lower IQ that it will make them a genius. It will not. But what it will do was it allows every single person to access the information and the ideas and to just chew on those thoughts and grow to whatever level they are capable of.
Yeah. That's so great. That's so great to know just because I would imagine, when you have a student who has learning differences, that discovery, figuring out like what's going to really work for them and how they can like thrive, that can probably feel like that in between time can feel very maybe discouraging and maybe isolating and just really hopeless, I would imagine. I know whenever we were trying to figure out what was going to be the best for our kids, it was just like, man, like when it's not working and you're trying to make something that's not working work, it's so frustrating. And so I think it's great for people to realize that you can move from a place of something not being a good fit and therefore all the feelings that come with something that's not fitting and not working to on the whole opposite spectrum to where your kid is thriving. Like that is such a beautiful thing to witness and to walk with your child through that journey of feeling discouraged, despaired to yay, like this is a happy place that we've come to. And so I just am excited to hopefully give people a glimmer of hope and excitement and expectation where maybe they felt really discouraged. And I don't know what that journey was like for you with your both your kids, but I know obviously when your daughter couldn't read in second grade, like, you know, no one else knew that was a problem but you. So I don't know what that journey was like um, from her not reading to figuring out, oh, okay, like she just learns differently. And so we need to find things that can help her do that. And then obviously, I know it was probably a huge relief to see the signs right away with your son and being like, okay, we know in part how to work with you on that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely important to, the earlier you can figure these things out, the better. And I just really want to encourage parents, don't be afraid of the labels. A lot of
Mm,
people feel like if they put a quote label on their kid, that it's somehow a bad thing and a limiting thing. But for both of my children, they will readily tell you that that label was freedom for them,
mm,
absolute freedom, because finding out, oh, I'm not stupid.
wow. Yeah.
I'm I have dyslexia. I'm dyslexic. My brain works differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. It just does mean that some things are going to be more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with when my son got his autism diagnosis. It was again very freeing for him to see I'm not I'm not broken and flawed and hopeless. There's a reason for this, and it has to do with just how my brain works. And yeah, my brain works differently than most of the people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and that does make a lot of things more difficult. They are legit disabilities, both of those things, but that doesn't mean they have to stop a person from being strong and successful
Mm-hmm.
and thriving in their life.
Yeah.
Um, and so for both of my kids, just those labels were they were
They
they were
were.
explanations of
Mhm.
what was going on, and that actually brought them great freedom.
Yeah.
And I know people think, oh, well, then that's just going to be an excuse. I got this diagnosis, and I won't even tell my kid. I don't want it to be an excuse to not work hard. But my experience with my kids and with others, it wasn't an excuse. It was an explanation of what was happening and let them know, oh, well, these are just areas that I'm going to have to work a little bit harder at
Mhm.
than the average person. And we've always taught our kids there is no shame in any of this. And there's not a mistake on how you were made either, that
Mm.
God intended your brain to be just like it is.
Mm.
And
It's
there
powerful.
are great gifts that come from these differences in neurotype.
Mhm.
There are gifts that come with a brain that thinks the way a dyslexic brain thinks.
Mhm.
Yes, it makes reading challenging. It makes some other things challenging. Foreign language is really hard, generally speaking, for people with dyslexia. Sometimes there are some math struggles that come along with it. And but there are also a lot of gifts that come
Mhm.
with this kind of brain, because these are the brains that think outside the box, that have a tendency to be able to be even more creative than the average. Same with like ADHD. It's a real pain in the behind sometimes as a person who has ADHD. But there are also great gifts that come with it. And
Mhm.
I think it's a mistake as parents to think that that means somehow our kids are broken,
Mm.
or for a person who struggles with these very things to feel that that is a flaw that they have.
Mhm.
uh, it, it may in fact be a struggle.
Right.
um, it is sometimes a disability, but there's not a person on the planet that doesn't have things that they struggle with,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
That's so good. So I think just number one, shifting a shift in perspective to see something that a lot of people could see as a negative, more so as a positive. I think that's one of the first ways that you can really help your child to thrive is like, this is not this is not bad. This is not bad. This is a gift. Yes, you're going to have to work harder at things that may come natural to other people, but I think that's everything. Everybody
Mhm.
has some things that just come naturally to them, whereas other people have to work harder at, but that's okay.
Mhm.
Like we can do that, you know? And so I think that reframing of the mind is one of the most important things that people can the first step into thriving is your mindset.
Yeah, I agree. But I also don't want to minimize some of the major challenges that are there. It,
Okay.
it can be really hard.
Mhm.
Um, d- just depending on how great the deficit is in whatever area you're talking about.
Mhm.
Along with the autism, my son has something called misophonia, where he's greatly affected by sounds. It's a really complicated neurological disorder. Um, but just recognizing that, finding out information about it, learning about it, teaching our child about it, and then being patient when it's at its worst, or being willing to even honestly stop a lesson sometimes because
Mhm.
it's too much.
Mhm.
So remembering always our born person, recognizing that you know um so I have a physical disability, as you know. I have to wear foot and ankle braces. And so that makes a lot of things harder for me.
Mhm.
But I still go hiking. I
Mhm.
love to hike. I still go hiking, but I can't do the challenging, super challenging hikes I did when I was younger. And I was could never do some of the challenging hikes that my husband and kids can do, right?
Mhm.
Because I do have a disability, but that doesn't mean I can't get out there and hike,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, um, so I don't want to minimize how hard it can be,
Mhm.
the huge challenges to a family in general, to our students in particular, to mom who carries so much of the weight of it.
Mhm.
It is hard. It's really hard.
Mhm.
But there are also beautiful things too. Like when I push through and do a hike, I get these beautiful views, and it is harder for me,
Mhm.
but maybe I get an even greater joy for that
Yeah.
extra challenge,
Mhm.
and sometimes I hurt too much to do any hike at all.
Mhm.
And I also have to come to terms with that. And I know I am I'm using the metaphor of a physical disability neurological struggle or disability, but I feel like I think it's a fair metaphor. There are times when um, the schoolwork is a joy, and there are times when it is just too much. But also the joy of a Charlotte Mason education is it's easy for us to pay attention to our born person, to not have to check a bunch of boxes, to pull back when we need to push in when we can. And regarding something like dyslexia, oh my goodness, uh, audiobooks. There are so many audiobooks available now.
Yeah.
Beautifully read audiobooks. And I just did a lot of reading aloud because I didn't want my kids to fall behind where they were intellectually, stuck with only what they were able to decipher on the page. Right?
Yeah.
So we found workarounds. And so I did read alouds a lot longer. And I don't mean like, oh, lots of us do read alouds. I mean, I read the majority of my kids' books a lot later than most people do.
Right.
And that's what we needed to do for my kids to access the information that they deserve.
Right. Yeah.
They deserve to be able to access that information and those ideas.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's so great that you were able to recognize, like, okay, this may not be what everybody else is doing, but this is really going to help my born persons to still progress at the rate that their minds are ready to progress, and stay kind of at that same pace. And so tell us, like, kind of what were some things that you did to really help your students thrive through their education through their schooling.
Okay, so one big one might feel shocking at a Charlotte Mason podcast because, and you know me, I'm very Charlotte Mason.
Yeah, you are.
So I did not use what Charlotte Mason said was the way to teach kids to read. It does not work for dyslexic brains. It simply doesn't. And I believe that Charlotte Mason, if she lived in this day and age, she would have changed how she said how we teach our kids to read. Because now the science is there to support it. Charlotte the word dyslexia didn't even exist yet, right? The science of how people learn to read didn't yet exist. So she loved science, and I just fully believe she would have absolutely.
She would have updated her thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the reason I say this is because I've seen people with kids who are dyslexic trying to follow Charlotte's way of teaching to read. And I'll be honest, I also don't think it stands up well. And I'm talking just how you teach a child who doesn't know how to read. I don't think it stands up well, even for the neurotypical child. And Charlotte she just knew what she knew, in the early 1900s. They just didn't know yet.
Right.
So I think there are better ways to teach to teach reading. Orton Gillingham is, I know it works for everybody, but it's absolutely fundamental for people who are dyslexic.
Okay.
And it's just a way to teach very explicitly every rule of the English language. And it can feel tedious, but if your kid's not dyslexic, they'll just fly through it. And there are lots of like Orton Gillingham based reading programs that are usually fine for the non-dyslexic. And if your kid's dyslexic, they may hit a wall, and then you just have to go to something a little more intensively Orton Gillingham. But I taught my moderately dyslexic child to read using Orton Gillingham without any trouble. And I taught my profoundly dyslexic child to read using Orton Gillingham. It just took longer, and he's 20 now. And can you believe he's 20?
Oh my gosh! Wow,
he's 20, and he will still make mistakes when he is reading, but he can usually realize, well, that didn't make sense. Let me go back. That's because I totally read that word wrong.
Yeah,
but we use lots of tools. Like my kids just did oral narrations longer than probably most kids, definitely than most neurotypical Charlotte Mason kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would use like voice to text. And David, my son will still use, he still uses voice to text as a major tool all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. If you need those tools, like you would never tell me I can't wear my braces and somehow I have to walk,
Right.
like a normal person when I've got compromised,
Mm-hmm.
mechanical issues with my body. Like you would never do that. And so,
Mm-hmm.
my braces are a tool so I can live in this world
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I can thrive, even if it's not perfect. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So using these tools that we have, audiobooks and um, voice to text, like all of those things, spell check, hey mom, can you edit my paper? All of those things are legitimate tools that just like level the playing field a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They're not cheating.
Yeah. That's so
Those
good.
tools are not cheating.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
Just like nobody would think me having to wear braces is cheating.
Right. Yeah. We wouldn't think anything about it. We're like, thank God you
Thank
have
God,
those.
because
Yeah.
you knew me before I got my braces, and you know how many struggles I had, and they were
Mm-hmm.
life changing. Well, the tools for helping our kids with whatever their struggles are, be it dyslexia or dysgraphia or dyscalculia or whatever, um, or if they're nonverbal, like there's all these. I have a friend who has got a nonverbal kid, and they have this like assistive language, this picture board, and eventually he'll be typing. Like those are tools to help people with
Mm-hmm.
struggles live in this world, just as valid as me wearing braces.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is just whatever works for them, like even no matter their age or their stage, like if it's helping them, let it continue to help them and feel no shame or guilt in those tools helping them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so even when they were older, my son would do some written narrations, but he would do fewer written narrations than the average Charlotte Mason high schooler.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that just was much harder for him regarding like his access of information. So he still needed to do some,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he was allowed to use voice to text. So when I say written narrations, voice to text was fine, but then you still have to go back and um, edit your own work and make it like a written narration and not just a conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's important to learn how to write.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to delay it and then modify it and then step by step by step. Um and he's just super smart and bright
Mm-hmm.
in spite of the struggles that he has. And if you sit and have a conversation with him, um like you're going to have a deep conversation, and that's because we still made sure he always had access to the big ideas, the deep ideas, the appropriate, cognitively is that the right word,
Yeah.
appropriate
Mm-hmm.
books and information out there.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's really great about a Charlotte Mason education is that it is a little more advanced, but they can totally connect with the ideas. So even though he may not have been reading it himself, he was still hearing it and making those connections for himself.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I don't think all traditional education, I have my opinions about it, but I'm not saying that it's all bad, but I think if he were in a traditional setting, he wouldn't really be thriving and being able to really make those connections in such a deep and meaningful way that he was able to with the Charlotte Mason education. Like this probably really did such wonders
Mhm.
for him and just how his brain works and processes information.
He would absolutely have spent all of his time in special education classes.
Mm-hmm.
He's, he has, I haven't even said the multitude of learning disabilities he has, but he is still extraordinarily bright, like above average intelligence
Mm-hmm.
with a stack of learning disabilities, like
Mm-hmm.
such a frustrating thing to be so smart and to have all these disabilities that makes it difficult to
Mm-hmm.
uh, express what you know and access what you what you want to learn.
Yeah.
And Charlotte Mason and just being home educated really made the difference. And when you add in the what is typical of autistic kids, this emotional dysregulation,
Mhm.
just having a call like that environment, that
Mm.
atmosphere that Charlotte
Mhm.
Mason talks about, being able to have that in our home, being able to assess on any given day or any given hour when we needed to take a break or go outside or find ways to re-regulate before we went back to the work was huge. And then also the fact that we use these amazing books,
Mhm.
right? Whether it's great literature or uh, whatever science stuff we were reading by actual experts in their field with living books rather than dry textbooks, just that igniting of passion for learning things
Mhm.
um, that our child was able to access and thrive and have interesting things to talk about even now, right? Like he is so much more well educated than the majority of the welders he's working with. He just could not bear the thought of going to college and just struggling through all of that and all the hoops you have to jump through to get a college education. And he just was like, I don't think I can handle that. But he continues his own self education.
Mhm.
The only true education is self
That's
education,
right.
says Charlotte Mason.
Yeah.
And he embodies that. He
Mm.
deeply believes that. So his job may be welding, which he's really, really good at
Mhm.
and very much enjoys making things with his hands and doing good work. And then he spends the rest of his time, diving into information that excites him.
That's really cool. Like at 20 years old, he's still learning and growing, even though he's technically done with his traditional schooling.
Hmm.
That's really cool. So what if I were a mom that was just like in tears and just really struggling with my students' learning differences, like what would be advice that you would give me? Like what would be my path and my journey? Obviously you would encourage me, but then what would you say would be some next steps?
So I would say, first of all, really learn Charlotte Mason's principles,
Mm.
her 20 principles, and take them seriously and teach always with your mind towards the principles. And so just our born person, and we're not allowed to manipulate our kids,
Mhm.
right? We don't bribe our kids. But the next big thing I would say is to work on our own personal self-regulation, begin to recognize when we ourselves are dysregulated, and to not be triggered by whatever struggle our child is having, and just to completely meet whatever their dysregulated state is with calmness, and to not to take it personally. It's not personal.
Mm.
It's not personal. Even if your child screams, I hate you, it's actually not personal.
Yeah.
I know that's hard to believe in the moment,
Yeah.
but it is not personal.
That's just good mothering. It's good parenting advice
Right.
because anytime our kids, like, any type of child is having struggles, like, we can take that personally, or we can feel like you're attacking me, or we can start to amp up our emotions to match theirs. And that's definitely not going to end well. So that's great advice for
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah. And really and truly, anything I would say is true for all kids, all humans.
Mm,
It's just we tend to have more times to practice that
there
when
you
we
go.
have kids who are, say, they're on the autism spectrum, or even if they're not, and they're just dealing with a learning disability. Like, that's hard and frustrating.
Mm,
And it's easy for a child to become dysregulated. It's easy for me to become dysregulated when I'm working on something that I'm struggling with.
sure.
And so if your struggle is learning to read and you're having reading lessons every single day
Hmm.
and you haven't had enough sleep and you've only had junk to eat, or not had anything to eat or whatever. All of those things play into and then you're an immature person because you're a child, because you're
Mm.
supposed to be immature when you're a child.
Mhm.
All of those things lead to more often being dysregulated, right?
Yeah.
And we just do not get to be dysregulated with our kids. I'm not saying that never happens. We're also not perfect. But then we come back and we apologize and we reset and we find ways to re regulate ourselves and them. And the more regulated we can be, the easier it will be for our children to regain emotional regulation.
Mhm. What were some things you did as you were growing in that journey with your kids? Like, what were some things you did to help regulate yourself?
Okay. Um, First of all, uh, this may feel controversial, but like we didn't spank.
Mhm.
And I think that is, honestly, I think it's an especially bad idea for kids who are struggling.
Mm.
I believe it nearly always, if not always, will make it take a lot longer to become re-regulated,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
And so that didn't mean our kids got away with all the things. Of course, they did not.
Mhm.
We also rarely did a timeout. I did time ins.
Mhm.
Oh, I see you're having a hard time with XYZ, whether it's sharing or hitting or whatever the thing is, right? So I need you to come and have a time in with mom, hang out with me. And they just like stayed glued to my side. And I'm honest, be honest, I didn't do interesting, fun things when they had a time in. I usually picked the worst chore I had to do, the most boring chore, the most what, and I didn't give them the silent treatment, but also I had work to do and now you're stuck with me.
Mm. Yeah.
But they also learned to do all those boring chores right by my side.
Mhm.
And they just would become, when I was calm, they would become more regulated. And if they weren't able to be regulated, like if it was like a full blown meltdown, then I just entered in with them, made sure they were in a safe space. And this is a story of my daughter as a toddler, but anybody who's got an autistic kid can know that sometimes the autistic meltdowns, no matter the age, can feel a lot like that. But she was having a complete and utter meltdown, tantrum, whatever you want to call it. And so we just went up to her room and shut the door. And I just sat on the floor by the door while she had her tantrum. And I just would quietly and calmly just let her know I'm here if you need me. And eventually she tantrumed it out and came and cuddled up in my lap and took a nap.
Oh, wow.
And so I know that I'm talking a toddler, but it can also look pretty similar if you're talking, a kid on the spectrum who is 8 or 10 or 12 or 14 who is having a major meltdown,
Mhm.
to not let it amp you up,
Mhm.
to be as calm as you can
How did you learn to be calm, Rebecca?
with a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And there were times with my kids where I said, mommy needs a timeout. And
Mhm.
I would go, they were safe. And I went to my room for a minute and I'm like,
Mhm.
I need a minute. And honestly, a lot of prayer and a lot of working on my own lifetime of baggage from my dysfunctional home.
Mm.
So as I worked on my own baggage, as I unpacked that and got healing and spent a lot of time in prayer and a lot of time practicing and a lot of time reminding myself, talking to myself about how I wanted to behave. How would I have wanted to be treated if I were in their shoes?
Mm. That's powerful.
And reminding myself that, a child's vision of who God is how their parents are. And um, how my parents treated me was not in a godly way. And it has to this day skewed my view of who God is, even though lots of healing has happened, right? And so I still struggle to see God truly as a good father who wants good things for me because my earthly father was not that way. And
Mm.
so when I remember that, oh my goodness, I want my children to have a good relationship with God and to know how patient he is and how much he loves them, no matter how they are behaving. And so, because I wanted that so badly, I worked really hard to say, well, how does God look at me when I'm at my worst?
Wow.
And to see my children the way God sees them. And God is not bothered or ruffled or angry when our children are melting down and having a hard time. And we do not have bad kids. Sometimes we have kids who are struggling with a bad time, right? And even like we can easily say, oh yeah, this one was my hardest kid. This one is my hard kid. We don't have hard kids. We have kids having hard times,
Yeah.
and they need us on their side.
Absolutely.
And they need to know we are not their adversary, and we are there to support them and help them learn. And the best way we can help them learn how to regulate emotionally is to model it as best we can, apologize when we mess up, and walk through it with them.
Wow. That's powerful. That's such great perspective that anybody can really glean from and really take to heart, because we do all, no matter what our kids walking through, have those moments where we're walking through a hard something. It's not, that's not who they are. That's not our family even. It's just, this is a moment that is hard. And so recognizing, like, what do we want our kids to uh, exemplify? We have to model that first.
And we don't punish our kids for the things that they are struggling with. They are struggling. I don't want to be punished by my husband if I've got a headache and I snap at him, right? I want compassion for the fact that I'm not feeling great and maybe I didn't behave great, but I don't need to be punished for that. And we don't need to punish our children for the things they're struggling in. They do need to be held accountable. If my child breaks something, whether it's totally accidental or in a fit of anger, then it's their job to repair it, make restitution if need be, right? But we also model those things as we go and walk with them, not shame on you, right?
Yeah, that's so good. Excuse me. So excuse me, the first thing you said is really powerful is we exemplify self-regulation and not pushing them away, but bringing them in when they're having a hard time. That's powerful. What else would you advise to a parent who's like at their breaking point, with trying to figure out, how do I help my kid? Like, what?
Sometimes we need to take a break, whether it's for an hour or a day or a weekend, right? Like, it's okay to have a break from our kids.
Okay.
It's I think it's vital to have a community of trusted people to support you and love you as you try to figure it out. Because there's a lot of, I just need to figure it out because there's none of these kids are cookie cutters, right? They're each and every one is different, no matter what their diagnosis is. And really, the things that I'm saying, like you said, that's just good parenting. And I think it's to remember that and just know that it's just going to be even more with some of these kids who struggle. I don't remember your question, but I do know that like the end of the day would come, and particularly, like, honestly, the worst days, the days where my son had the biggest struggles and the biggest meltdowns were the evenings that I would go up and tuck him into bed and tell him deeply from my heart, and kids know if it's from your heart or not, that that I was so grateful that God had put him in our family, and that I know what a hard day he had today. But a hard day will never define who you are. Wow. And I love you, and I am so glad that God trusted this family to have you be part of it, because our life is richer and better because you are in it.
Wow.
And my son has told me I know it makes me cry too, with the multitude of things that he has struggled with. It's also common to struggle with just mental health. And he struggled with depression and even suicidal ideation for a while. And he said, those are the words. Those are the words that he held on to when he wasn't sure it was worth living. And so it's just so important to see our children with the eyes of God and to let them know that, right? To let them know that like they're not allowed to run amok.
Right.
But also a hard time doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah.
And you're learning and you're growing, and I'm going to help you with that. And we're going to learn together. And I will never exclude you. I will never give you the silent treatment. I may need to keep you close. And we may not be able to go to the playground until you can stop, being aggressive, or maybe we're at the playground and we now need to leave because it's turning right?
Right.
Like there are still consequences for our actions, but the consequence is not that you are shunned and I am angry with you. And not that we're human, we are allowed to feel anger, but also we are adults and we are parents and we need to, let me do what I need to do to get regulated. Let me pray a lot because we need to be the model of who God is to our children.
Yeah,
and God
absolutely.
is patient and kind with us. And I don't know about you, but I've got stuff in my life that I don't want the rest of the world to know about. And he knows it, and he still loves me.
Yeah.
And we need to be that kind of a parent to our kids as much as possible.
I'm sure we've had the Kleenex box right here. It's a little too far.
I know it's going to make us cry, but
no, that's so good.
There are going to be a lot of tears in parenting. If you've got neurotypical kids, we still cry.
Yeah.
But man, when you got these kids that struggle and maybe have things that we don't understand, it's, all the more so. But I'm not kidding when I say what an amazing gift our son is to our family and to the world. And he would not be the same person if he was not on the spectrum. And so I can't even feel sad about that. I wish that some of the burdens he carries were lighter. I do. And I pray about those things all the time. But God also is equipping him to be the man he wants him to be.
Yeah, that's so good.
And I can't see the things God sees.
Yeah, that's so good, Rebecca. I love just your perspective of really seeing your kid the way God sees them and treating them like that and verbalizing that and speaking that over to them. I cannot imagine what healing balm that was to him that night after he had probably a really hard day. And sometimes, it's like they're, maybe acting one way, but they feel really conflicted. Like, I know I shouldn't be maybe, doing XYZ, but for whatever reason, like this is how it's, coming out. And then for you to not bring that shame and guilt, but love.
They already feel shame. Because also an autistic meltdown, it's like a thing that's really out of their control. And so why am I going to shame my kid for something out of their control? And that's also something really important for parents of kids like this to understand, that a lot of what happens is not actually within their control. And even with that, if things are broken, then once they're re-regulated and things are calm and we're in a good place, it's still their responsibility to fix those things. But excuse me, but they don't need more shame. They trust me. They've got the shame already, right? And God does not pour shame down on us,
right? Yeah.
And we do not need to pour shame down on them,
right?
Responsibility for whatever your actions were. There are consequences, but there's not shame. There is love and support. And how can we do this differently?
Yeah, that's good. So there's love, there's responsibility, and there's still consequences, but there's not shame, there's not guilt, there's not condemnation for those things. That's really powerful. Anything else that you would want to share with a mama?
Yes, actually, sorry.
That's great.
Yes. So all of Charlotte Mason's talk about let's work on habits.
Mm,
Oh my goodness. So important. Let's
mm,
work on our having a schedule, our school schedule. Just having a schedule was transformative for us. I mean, I think it can be transformative for anyone,
mhm.
but when you've got a kid who is neurodivergent, having that routine, that schedule, having these habits set up and just calmly, this is the next thing that we do. And sometimes even literally pointing to the schedule that you have printed out kind of takes it off of you,
Right.
you know, being flexible with
Mhm.
that. We need a lot of flexibility when we've got kids who struggle or have learning disabilities or autism or whatever the thing is. We don't need to be a slave to this schedule, but that schedule is a very good tool. The habits that we build,
Mhm.
the rhythms of a day, of a week, of a month are
Mhm.
very important.
Mhm.
And all that amount of time out of doors that Charlotte tells us we need, it nature is so very regulating.
Mm.
And I know that sometimes parents are tempted to take away that day at the park, take away that time outdoors because their behavior has been atrocious. But in my experience, actually, maybe we need to end class early and spend more time at the park,
Mhm.
more time doing things that re-regulate us because the lessons will be there and we can
Right.
get back to them later.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not advocating um, never doing school, but we actually got more school done. We got further along by sometimes going, yeah, I think this day is done. Let's close the books. Let's go outside. Maybe we close the books and go outside, and now we're in a better place.
Mhm.
So we come back in and pick up the books
Ready.
again,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So the schedule, but also holding on to this ability for to be able to be flexible, right? Kind of
Mhm.
this balance with that and be outside, be outside, be outside, be outside as much as possible.
Yeah.
My son's passion is mountain biking.
He loves being outside.
Yes. So mountain biking at all is very, very regulating. I don't know. I think it's something about the pedaling and being outdoors and the breathing the fresh air and the physical exertion, very regulating. And I would not ever like remove that as a punishment. No, you can't do that because you behaved poorly here.
Mhm.
Right.
That's
Uh,
good.
there might still be a consequence, but
That's not gonna be one of them.
that's not gonna be it. No, we're gonna be outside as much as we can. Yes, we're gonna be physical. We're gonna bike. We're gonna hike. We're gonna do all of those things. They're
Mhm.
very regulating.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Man, I got so much out of this podcast episode. And I know that those who may be in the thick of um, educating and even raising a neurodivergent child, I really hope we prayed before and just really prayed that people would hear what they needed to hear and that it would really um, just meet them wherever they are at. And I know I was chatting on something recently with a mom that took your session from the conference last year because this was your breakout session from last year. And she's like, I am still just so blessed and just feeling refreshed and recharged and having just a helpful mindset or the right mindset in educating and raising a neurodivergent child. And so, Rebecca, thank you so much for just sharing what's been kind of like your life's work, with raising and educating your children. Um, you make me a better person and a better mom, and so I'm so grateful for you and just for what amazing kids you've raised, and just what a great example you are to all of us. So
Thank you.
gonna need those tissues again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you guys, everybody, for joining this episode. And I would love to hear from you just what your takeaway was from this episode, whether you're dealing with student with learning differences or not. I would love to hear just your takeaway from this episode. And Rebecca is the one that helped me remember what Charlotte Mason says. And that is that the only true education is self-education. So we're never going to stop learning. We're never going to stop growing. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Have a great one. Woo-hoo!